Halt podcast. Let's go.
You're dealing with an expert in guerrilla warfare. With a man who's the best. With guns, with knives, with his bare hands. A man who's been trained to ignore pain, ignore weather, to live off the land. His job was to dispose of enemy personnel. To kill. Period. Win by attrition.
You block it out with your head, that'd be perfect.
I got a big head.
Doc, how you doing, brother?
Good, man.
Dude, it's been quite a hectic last few weeks. Everything from U.S. citizens moving down to the border, trying to, bring more attention to the costs, and then the worry and concern of the movement being infiltrated by individuals that maybe have nefarious intent, and then Governor Abbott taking matters into his own hands and speculation of just horrible things to come. And rather than letting speculations and gossip and hearsay take over the interwebs and everybody's social media feeds, I reached out to you because I'd like to get some insight as to what's really going on. How are you guys handling the chaos at the border? So thank you for being here this morning, brother.
Denny, I appreciate you once again. So, provocateurs, infiltrators, nefarious actors, Murphy, all those things kind of fell on our shoulders. And any other, operation, if you will, our job was to liaise between the convoy, which was to take our border back movement, which is really a rally. The wording of that, what they chose to call it, is their business, but it triggers something in the minds of those that would look for a reason to cause some kind of chaos, right? I mean, that's just the way it is. So literally, it's a grassroots movement, and I'm going to speak what I know about them, what their intent was. 5 people, but a bunch of people, 5 organizers got together, godly people, just sweet people, innocent really, and just wanted to have a convoy, not just trucks, but trucks and cars, and go from the East Coast to the West Coast. And San Ysidro was a final anchor point, but they had Yuma in Arizona, and then the leg that I was responsible for as liaison-wise was the Eagle Pass one. Of course, that's in the news right now, as well as portions of Arizona, Lukeville, but for me, it's that. So as a good liaison, I talked to my law enforcement partners, of which, when I was in uniform last year, Texas National Guard, my job was to liaise with them anyway. So I knew everybody. I knew all the actors, which is great. So I have a good working knowledge, just like anytime we go downrange, we send out an ad bond team. They link up with somebody on the ground that understands it. We know that's a friend. And we basically just said, okay, guys, this is what's going on. But here's the funny part is, me being out of the military and speaking to these partners, even the law enforcement partners at the upper levels had already been kind of swayed a little bit with their trying to understand the intentions of the peaceful movement. Mm-hmm. And so they're like, Doc, what are you doing? What are you doing? And I'm like, hey, I'm not the leader of this thing. Let's just get that straight. I am the liaison. Now, in the absence of leadership, we know that you have to lead sometimes. So I would go and sit in on their steering meetings and listen to them. And there was a lot of good intent, but there wasn't a lot of, what do you call it, military decision-making processes, looking at all the contingencies and pace plans and things. And people just don't think that way sometimes. We do. And so I kind of gave them the warning, like, hey, here's the most likely course. This is most likely what's going to happen. But then we go to most dangerous thing, you're going to get provocateurs and infiltrators and all those things. Now, that being said, it was really, me just going back to my team and look, we're down here doing different things. We're advising local municipalities, our business, our think tank, or more of a do tank, on how to best shore up their positions to deny territory to the bad actors that are coming across the border. That's what we do. But in doing that, we know a lot of information. So me marrying that up with the liaison piece was perfect place for it to happen. And a lot of good things happened from that. So, I think the victory is that nothing happened, right? But that doesn't mean that nobody intended ill will. And that's that's what I really want to talk about. Yeah.
Yeah. It's, we see it happening, and we're sort of like hyper aware, hypersensitive to it because, no shocker, vast majority of our career was learning how to do this stuff, was learning how to be the opposition, how to go into an environment where we can become those individuals that are creating that chaos and training others to create that. Which is why I am constantly looking at situations and saying, this doesn't look right. This looks a bit dangerous. Let's gameplay this. And you're 100% correct. Our civilian brothers and sisters that are trying to do great things, trying to bring awareness, they don't think like we do.
Right. You know, they're looking like we look for seams and gaps, right? I mean, we look for the seams and the gaps in the chaos. And actually, I kind of enjoy the chaos. You know, during this whole thing, you know, several days of no sleep, it was actually like get up every day and just be like, this is awesome. But we are like meeting them being the opposition, whoever they were. And there were 15 different events that didn't take place that could have made this look bad. We met those event provocateurs at those seams and gaps, but we were already ready for it. So when let's just use one example, when they said, well, there's 700,000 trucks coming, you know, and that created the first fear in the mind of Department of Public Safety, like, what's going on, Doc? You got, you know, almost 1 million trucks. No, that's not what happened. That is just that's a psyop, right? That's 5th generation warfare stuff. But we just countered that with, well, let's get on bigger media, you know. So I didn't intend for it to happen, but I ended up on, you know, Tucker Carlson. So that was not by my intention, but Tucker Carlson had received some Twitter responses saying, when he said, "Where are the men in Texas?" on a tweet, just a simple, you know, post. And I know he did it on purpose, because he's also, you know, trying to figure out what's going on the ground too, from his point of view. And so a bunch of people answered it and said, well, why don't you talk to Lieutenant Colonel Chambers? He knows what's going on. And this is the grassroots thing. This is why this is so important. When people then start firing that back, saying, boom, 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 he sees it over and over. And then kind of Maria Z out of Australia, she's pretty well known in Australia. She's the Alex Jones of Australia. She posted it too, because I've been on her show a few times. And that's where he responded. He called my business partner and said to, you know, retired Colonel Phil Waldron, who was, you know, one of the guys that was instrumental in you know, showing the Dominion machine fiasco. He came from the INT side of the house. And so Colonel Waldron, you know, very, very well known in that community. He knows Tucker. So Tucker's literally talking to him on the phone when I walk in with my Ranger panties, as I'm dressed now, and my hoodie because it's cold, with my coffee. And I'm walking in this door right behind me. And he says, "Hey, I got Tucker on the phone." I'm like, "Okay, what's up?" He's like, "Well, he wants to talk to you." So literally his people called me and I was on the next day. So, you know, 20-minute spot, but what it was able to do is to take it up to high order. And so now you've met that, you've parried that first seam and gap, which was the information. It's not that. Here's what it is. And that was the first win. And then from there, it just we continue to meet him at every you know, 3-4 hole in the offensive line. So, you know, it's kind of amazing.
And that's the type of information warfare that we're dealing with, trying to elevate the actual truth, not a narrative, but the actual truth of what's going on. And modern traditional media does a horrible job of just spinning things out of control. There's not a lot of people to watch it anymore, but the people that do, that's all their information. That's the only source they have. So if the only source of information is coming from The View, coming from mainstream media, they think we have a convoy of vigilantes. We have ex-paramilitary individuals killing and harming poor innocent migrants. And that couldn't be further from the truth. And the more we promote that ideology and promote those lies and that narrative, the further we get from the truth that if a nation doesn't have secure borders, it's not a nation.
Yes.
If I went all the way to New York and kept walking and made it to the Canadian border and tried going into Canada illegally, what would happen?
You'd be rolled up.
I would get get rolled up. I would get processed and quickly be sent right back.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
But
any of these countries, 150 countries are represented coming across right now on our
Yeah.
border. And you would be met with some sort of at least a secondary, conversation.
Yeah.
So, I think that this was an example of, and I'll tell you the rest of the story first, and then that way you can understand as we build up. So after this was over, literally the governor's office reached out and talked to Phil, and then talked to us and said, "Hey, thank you. That was a really good example of how to off gas a problem set."
Yeah.
And so I met with and will continue to meet with the head of DPS, kind of their information people, and say, all right, well, how can we do this in the future if this happens again? Because that fits into their game plan, right? The state of Texas, who is in a constitutional fight right now with at least 25 other states, to say, hey, guess what?
Yeah.
There's a constitution, and there's an Article 4, Section 4. There's an Article 10, Section 1, subsection 3, that says that the states have a right to do this under constitutional law. Now, that is opposite to what they were arguing before, which was case law. And when we have case law, now we're going to look at the domain of the legal system. When we look at that, we just mentioned the media, but the legal system, which does the same thing. They argue in a Hegelian dialectic, which then left versus right, case law versus, it's always so-and-so versus government, or government versus so-and-so. We then end up synthesizing something else. In the meantime, we got an alligator approaching our canoe, which is, 12,000 people sometimes in 24 hours on the border, instead of how it used to be less than that in a month. So they have I feel for people. I had sergeants in my unit down there on the border that came across that river illegally and then served valiantly in the U.S. Army and became great citizens. And many of these people will be, and we continue to embrace them, but appropriately. We do it through a means, and that's the immigration side of the house. But that system's broken too, as we see that Mr. Mayorkas is currently under threat of being impeached.
Yeah. And then that's, I wanted to highlight that. I posted something on my social media stream, and the first thing that I had, first comment, was somebody, I would say, looks and appears like a middle-aged man, probably has a family. And the comment is, how dare you post something negatively to these poor people? What do you have against these poor people? Like, no, you don't understand. There's no negativity, no hate, no animosity. There is a compassion element to this. There's a national security element to this. I have a lot of compassion and look at the plight of these individuals and understand completely. I'm not born and raised American. I'm an immigrant myself. Like, I know what it means to be an immigrant in the United States. It's not an easy fucking thing. Yeah. But let me tell you something. When you sell this idea of prosperity, of a federal system that will take care of you and feed you and provide you with free money, you're not incentivizing somebody to live to their best ability, to be their best self. You're incentivizing people to come here for a handout. And when your best friend is the state, you will do anything to advance the state's agenda. That's a horrible thing. That's a dystopian future that we do not want. We want individuals that can live, breathe, and excel in the American way. The American way where it's like, hey, I come here. Yes, there are programs to help me get on my feet, get established, and then I'm going to live the American dream. I'm going to fight for it. And we're losing that. And we're now selling this idea of, come here, we're going to give you money. We're going to, take away resources from the hundreds of communities that are in desperate need of support and of care. And we're going to take all those resources and we're going to give them to you. And now we're starting to see the backlash. Yeah,
brother. I mean, my dad was an immigrant and came here, back in the 50s, and we went through the system, became a citizen, and prospered and, did well in life. And, he told me, son, you're going to go in the Army to protect this, whatever service, to protect this thing that made our family capable of having these things. He came from nothing. I mean, he came here with, $40 in his pocket. But these are things that people just don't understand. There's compassion completely, but I also understand that there's laws and that there are to be adhered to so that the system doesn't get overwhelmed. Because if we go to the strategic level on that, that's a tactic that a guy named Bezmenov, a KGB defector, talked about, that said, hey, listen, here's what's going to happen to America. And it was almost like he's reading the playbook now, but that was over, that was in the 80s. So that's what they did. Look, I've been in Venezuela when it was good and, things were great. I was working, air ambulance, go down there and it was wonderful. And then all of a sudden now people are leaving it and standing in line for food. So, I got it, man. I mean, it's very easy to listen to those media sources, but I tell you who really listens to those media sources are the bad actor leadership, because they're using that as part of their information operation campaign. A lot of that money that goes into those, mainstream media folks comes from the world economics or the globalists or the elitists. But I'm going to speak for Texas now and say that, that's a game. As long as we don't get on that game playing field, we don't have to play that game, because the elitists play polo, right? Guys on a horse hitting a little ball. But in Texas, we play rodeo, and that's a real sport. We keep playing rodeo. There's no chance for them to do anything here with their little ball.
I don't think people understand the gravity of the situation when you leave the governor of Texas no choice but to take matters into their own hands, and then the threats come. We haven't seen that, at least in my lifetime. We've never seen that, where it's now becoming a threat. I mean, there was the issues with Texas gas instantly. And now we're watching. I think everybody is waiting to see what the next chess move is. What's the next thing that they're going to levy against Texas?
Yeah, and there's a long flash to bang, if you will, when you start limiting people's, just say, gas supply, natural gas. They did it in Europe, and it's going to be a while, but the winter's upon them in Europe, and people are cold and they're burning trees, and we're hearing about that. But we have to look at that as kind of an indicator of where we could possibly be in the next 6 months to a year. We speak to people in Europe, member of parliament. There's one that's specifically there in the House of Commons that I talk to regularly. Same thing in Australia, because we have to use that as indicators to make decision points in order to take a left or a right down the road. But, we're just a small element, but we advise those above us. And now I think that this was a good example of what we, the people, can do when you marry up law enforcement, the people, municipalities, and say, okay, we, the state of Texas, are going to hold our own in this sense. And there was a famous battle. I mean, I shared it on Alex Jones last night in France in World War I, Ypres, Battle of Ypres. And the French were, outnumbered, but the German line came across and pushed through really hard into an area that they brought them into, that they own the real estate and the terrain features. And they had that big element surrounded then on three sides by a lesser force. And they were able to thwart that off. So in this case, the three sides were we, the people, the state law enforcement and local law enforcement, and then the truck, the truckers, the convoy people. Yeah. So they were able to do their thing and able to protect them from the oncoming force, which was the media force and the provocateurs. And so guys like us went into work, and said, okay, today, instead of, shoring up some landowner's property to deny territory to the cartels, I tell you what we're going to do today. We're going to protect these, 500-600 people in these 200 vehicles, and they're going to be able to do what they want to do. And they did not disrupt. They didn't drive to Eagle Pass. They were 20 miles north of there in a camp, the children's camp for orphans and widows. I mean, you can't write this stuff, in a book and make it sound any more benign, but it was turned around to sound like, well, here's the picture they had. Pete Chambers on the front of a Peterbilt truck with a sword in his hand going, let's go round up migrants. But that's not what happened, right? I mean, literally, it's not what happened. I mean, and I don't even know how I got, made the leader of it. I told Tucker, I was like, well, he said, oh, I hear you're the leader. I was like, no. I'm the liaison. And that's okay. I got to be the face of this thing. Somebody's got to be. It's kind of like you're the 18 Alpha. You're getting yelled at by the battalion commander.
Yeah.
And the team sergeant behind you going, idiot.
Someone's got to take the ass chewing.
Lots of vitriol came out on the media about me. Crazy stuff.
Yeah, which is the exact thing that they do. Which is when we first talked a few days ago, that was like, it's not shocking, but it is when it's somebody that and you've seen and you've worked with, and 100%. It's one thing to see it happen to Donald Trump, to see it happen to political figures, but see it happen to somebody personally. It's like where do they get this information? Where do they pull the things they're pulling out of the ether to attack you with is insane. Bad shit, crazy.
There was all kinds of my favorite was this supposed Green Beret who calls himself that. I'm like, well, I mean, I wasn't the typical team guy, for sure not, but I definitely served and whatever, but that didn't bother me. But it was trying to link me up with pedophiles. That was another one.
Yeah.
And, they're going to talk to lawyers and they're going to either back off of it or they're going to, we're going to have a lot of donation money for that little church down there on the border. So one or the other, that's the way it's going to roll, because I'm not going to take a dime from that, because that's not my intent in this. I mean, we dug out of a lot of our own resources, and we're behind the curve on that, but we had to do this because this was important. This was a nowhere near the level of veracity, but this was an Alamo moment where, we're going to hold the line and we're not going to back off of this. I don't care what vitriol you throw at us.
Yeah. No, and going back to Eagle Pass, now that there's more control there, it did exactly what everybody knew was going to happen. Now the flow has been almost completely stopped.
You want the inside scoop on that? Yeah, you do. Let me tell you that sometimes on the border, there's an optic and there's a reality, as anything. And so I've worked that border. In my last mission on the border was with the I won't say the name of the unit, but I'll just say their first battle streamer says the Alamo on it, which was pretty cool. And that was the unit I got out of. But the putting the wire at Eagle Pass, which is, look, there's still 1,249 other miles of Texas border. And there is a game that's played, which is kind of whack-a-mole-ish in nature. And so the cartels know they have spotters on both sides. They've been doing that since they've been, days of Pancho Villa. So we understand that. But what happened now is everybody's focused there. And just like anything, the periphery, what's happening to the upstream, downstream is where the true bad actors come across, the mules with fentanyl. I mean, that's chemical warfare. The guns going north, sometimes the guns going south, sometimes missing, serial numbers. I mean, those are reality of what's happening. And now you talk to any border sheriff and they'll tell you that their office is filled right now with captured weapons, where when I used to walk into the sheriff's offices a couple of years ago, there wasn't any captured weaponry from cartels. So, that's to me now stepping up the game, because when it's just about moving products, let's say back in the day, bundles of marijuana, now we're talking about children that are being brought across to be sold as sex slaves. I mean, it's pretty ugly, and and some things way worse I wouldn't talk about here. But then there was fentanyl, which now is laced with tranq, which is xylazine, which is a horse tranquilizer that kills people. That's chemical warfare. The Chinese are behind that one, but they paired up with the cartels who don't care about people's lives, just money. And what's that? That's the reverse of the opium wars of the 1820s through 50. It's a long brewing hate. They'll get you back.
And it's calculated.
It's very calculated. And it creates it demoralizes the nation. It's what happened when they did it to China, when France and Great Britain did it to China over trade routes. Well, now the trade routes are in different forms, but it's still ultimately the goal is to occupy the territory of the United States, to demoralize, and then to possibly overtake from within, which is what Yuri Bezmenov warned of. And so all these things are very clear to us. And, I'm a glasses half full guy, and it's not going to happen on our watch.
Yeah. No, it's It's time for individuals that have served, for people that are truly American first, champions for the way of the American way of life, to start doing things, to start taking action. And it doesn't mean that I need you to go grab a rifle and go to the border. It means we need you to start talking and advocating and fucking writing letters and calling your representative and not sitting in the sideline. And yeah, if it means running for an office, if you find that you're passionate for it, start getting involved.
Yeah.
The culture has shifted and it needs to come back. We need to bring back the ideas that made us great. We need to bring back the way things were. And if we don't do that and start moving that ball, we are going to lose this. This is a very dangerous time right now. I'm not sitting back. I'm being more active, more talking about this, because mental health and resilience, they all tie into this. If you turn on the TV, you're watching nothing but the worst propaganda being funneled in from Netflix to Disney. It all has an agenda.
Right.
And we have to be willing to talk about it and understanding why they're putting that out there. Why is the optic being flipped to this? Why are we only hearing this information? Why aren't we talking about this? Why aren't we willing to engage and ask the questions and say, like, hey, maybe we should have secure border. Maybe it's not an emotional argument. Maybe it's not that I hate people, that I don't have compassion. Maybe that I want our nation to be safe, secure, and have, stability. Why are we not talking about ending these forever wars? Why aren't we not engaging with the idea of, like, hey, maybe the military industrial complex isn't a great thing.
Right.
Maybe we shouldn't be in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Syria, constantly perpetuating these forever wars. The fact that we never tried or never even fired anybody for what happened in Afghanistan, to me, is just
indicative
insane.
of the moral injury that has taken place from the top down. And it is straight up indicative, because when you've got a bunch of GOs that are pushing their way to get to the top to become a senior executive staff person, and the SES model, which is the continuity of stupidity at the top, and then those guys are all bumping elbows trying to get to Raytheon and Boeing and all those to then perpetuate wars.
Yes.
We're spending, I've been, in my SF career in dozens and dozens of countries doing, foreign internal defense and training people to be partner nations. Yet then we are now doing domestic internal defense here, and then still looking at other ways to, poke Bubba in the eye downrange so that we can start another war and bomb Houthi rebels and try to, Ukraine didn't work. Let's try it in Poland now. Let's see if we can somehow get Russia to press the button. And I'm really interested to see what Tucker Carlson finds out with Putin, because that right there is going to then expose more. And then people will say, well, then you must be a communist. Well, no, I'm the guy in 1983 that stuck a bayonet in a Russian dummy in Fort Benning, Georgia, saying, all right, we got to prepare for the Folger Gap. So no, I'm not that guy. What I'm saying is that information drives operations, intelligence drives operations. And so we've got to really measure 3 times to cut once here. And that's what I believe is important, because if I say that there's something wrong with this border, and then you're going to come after me using all your resources, and then possibly freeze my bank account and possibly do this or do that to come after me, then I know that I'm over the target. And it's not just me. I mean, I'm just one person in the wilderness out here screaming, as you are. And so, when you see that coming at you, you know that you must be striking a nerve somewhere.
Absolutely. And I say it all the time. If your retired soft professional friend is telling you, hey, this is something we should be passionate about and advocating about and talking about, listen to them. Yeah. For God's sakes, we go to the unconventional warfare school to learn every facet of unconventional warfare, to be students of what it means to go into a population. And it only takes a small percentage to tip things over, to start moving that war effort. When you see things happening in your own country, in your own state, like that's where I'm at. That's where a lot of other Green Berets and other soft professionals are at, where it's like, this doesn't make sense. This are scary situations, and everyday Americans are just happy to just continue moving along. And the reason being is because we're all too comfortable. We're all too happy. And you look at other countries and you ask yourselves, like, well, why were they able to, resist? Well, they didn't have comforts.
Right.
They didn't have that. Like, hey, the average American is very happy drinking their Starbucks, watching their Netflix. Hey, it's okay. What is a couple million immigrants coming through?
Brother,
We'll be fine.
nail on the head. In our world, and I learned in softens from 2003 on through 22. And then prior to that, as an enlisted guy, I didn't know anything about this, but I'll tell you, the center of gravity of everything is people, right? It really is. It's not infrastructure. It's not, military industrial. It's not politics. It's definitely not politics, But when I was on the border the other day, sitting on the river, looking at the Mike side, we call it Mexico, and I'm just sitting there watching to make sure that nothing happens across the way 400 meters into Mexico in this desolate area. Just watching. And I had made contact with the federales on the other side and said, could you please patrol it? I have a friend that lives there. He went and talked to him. And they were out there on their side, making sure. I was on our side, just watching. And just because I felt responsible for these people that were behind me, doing a rally. Yeah. It's really a rally, and it was a church service too. But I met a family there on the river that in this really desolate place, mesquite trees. I mean, the pecan orchards. There's nothing really there other than that. And I walked in there, and it was kind of like they offered me to kind of have lunch. So I sat down, had lunch with them. Yeah. And I said, why are you guys still here? You got hundreds and hundreds of people a night coming across. I mean, your house has been plundered. Your barns have been stolen from. And this old rancher looked at me and said, mis raíces están aquí. He said, my roots are buried here, right? He's as American as they come. He's on the U.S. side. And he told me that, mis raíces están aquí. And I thought about that, and I thought, he's not leaving here because that's where his roots are from. And he's still dealing with this. And these are the people, the center of gravity, who are overlooked at, Fox News, and are overlooked at CNN, and are overlooked at the White House, and are overlooked. They're just as important as Bill Gates, right? Yeah.
I would say a little bit more.
So that became my calling cry down there to people down there. Look, mis raíces, our roots are buried here. Whether you have a Hispanic background or a European or all the way back to the Revolutionary War, you now are here, and these are your roots. And other people have the opportunity to do that, but they've got to do it through a system that doesn't get overwhelmed. Otherwise, nobody gets anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a system in place, and when our own politicians and they have a way of, they're really eloquent and they're really good with how they word things and the phrases they use. Mm-hmm. We're going to fix the issue. So we need to fix the immigration reform laws so that we can make immigration easier. And it's like, no, secure the borders. Like, secure the borders, provide security. Don't worry about paperwork and legalities. No. Like, make the process, whatever you have to do on the back end, take care of that. Yes, absolutely. But you have to take care of the infrastructure, the actual systems that are going to keep people out rather than just walking in. Like the reports of military age males coming across the border without families, without kids, unaccompanied males. Oh. That's not people seeking asylum.
No.
These aren't people seeking safety. And we're looking at numbers that are through the roof.
I think there's a division.
From places like China.
I think there's a division right now. I'm talking to Jason Jones, who is an expert on the border, former DPS intelligence guy. He works, I believe he speaks for Newsmax now. He knows the numbers, and the numbers are in the Biden administration, at least a division of fighting age males or more have entered this nation. So if we look at that, I don't live in a spirit of fear, but we have to understand who's out there. As Sun Tzu would say, understand yourself and the enemy, and you'll know the outcome. We've got to be able to be realistic about this and quit hiding things, because
absolutely,
honestly, bro, it's it's the polished speakers, it's the politicians, the polished ones, right? Somebody said something the other day about a little thing that I put out on my Telegram and said, well, this guy, talks like an idiot. Well, no, I just talk plain, and I don't want to listen to a polished person. Obama was polished, right? And look where that got us. So, I could go on with people on the Hill that are polished, that are really not out there for us. We need to focus on states' rights, the doctrine of lesser magistrates, if you will, where those sheriffs really mean a lot to us in Texas. And there are some great sheriffs, but there's also some other ones out there they're cowards. I'm just going to say straight up cowards. And that's where we need people like you and I to take off that uniform that we had and put on the sheriff uniform and stand in the gap, even if that's the level. And then the other ones like Cameron Hamilton, former SEAL, who's up there in Virginia running for Congress. I mean, against a guy named Vindman, whose brother was the guy that was, inserted into the Ukraine conversation with the president and came after the president in uniform. I don't know if I did that, I'd be, thrown in the brig. But that's what we have to do. Is we've got to step into those positions of authority, so that we can interpose, if you will, or speak for our constituents, and also stand on the line, because I don't have authorities. I don't have AAA authority here. I can't, go out and do everything, but I can find and fix locations like any other citizen can, and say, hey, sheriff, that's what's going on there. Now you give us a badge and things will change. We'll knock it out pretty quick. But until then, until Texas legislators listen to us, we've been asking, put us in, coach.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. It's being able to give guys or promote the idea of continued service. Like, now is the time.
There's a purpose.
Now is the absolute time. It is not quite the desperate hours. There's still things we can do. But when you look at the numbers and you see the reality that there's more than a division or a division plus of individuals, military age males, that have come into your country, and we don't know the answer. And dude, sit down. You have the detachment planning guide. Just plan it out. Play red team. Play the red team scenario. What would you do? Yeah. Now, a lot of us have gone on and had additional planning and additional courses that help you build out all sorts of nefarious game ideas for red teams. Just sit down for one day, for maybe an hour, not even 30 minutes. And I guarantee you can put together a great scenario where a division plus of individuals in your country could create a lot of chaos in the coming years. Like, it's literally SF Dungeons and Dragons. You can do it. And the result is pretty shocking. It's not a good feeling. It's not something that any of us should take lightly. But if we listen to modern media, we get baited with the idea that if we talk about it, if we advocate against open borders, we're horrible, inhuman, non-compassionate individuals. And brother, I am so tired of hearing that narrative, because 90% of what we've done in the military is nothing but being good, honest, hardworking, compassionate individuals, helping individuals. And yeah, we ended up carrying a rifle and a lot of munitions while doing that. But a lot of the work we do was of service to others. And now it's time for us to do it here in this nation. I don't see the current administration doing anything. And the thing that scares me too is the fabrication of a crisis in order to contain and establish that chokehold of power going into an election year. I don't know if that's something that you've thought of as well, but that's
in the election year stuff. I work with, like I said, Colonel Waldron, who is very astute in that regard, in that he helped to find, the diminishing machine problem. And then, of course, locally, we were very involved with politics in Texas, in that we had people from all around the country now come in to listen to the border situation, because that's our primary point here of our think tank. But it's they come in, and we sent down a lady that's running for Congress or for Senate in Michigan, and she got to take off with one of our security guys. He's a level 4 state PSD guy, so he took her down and gave her a tour and introduced her to sheriffs. She came back and her eyes were wide open and said, I had no idea. Right. But that is what we need. We need those people to listen. And then that way, when they get up there to those positions of authority, can weigh in so that we don't just think poorly of our federal government, because I don't want to think that way. My heart was broken on the day that they lost Afghanistan. And then the State Department really took the lead on that and just destroyed everything that we spent 20 years doing. Did we, in the very beginning of this thing, think that that was a good idea? No, but we're soldiers and we do what we need to do. But we also understand, as we learn more and more about it, we are the SMEs of those situations. And so now when this is happening to us and there's an insurgency within, we see it very clearly. You can see it a mile away. We're very left of bang on that because we see and go, here's your cues. We need 3. I think I've got about 450 cues right now that's what's happening. And all I need is 3 to say, hey, I'm not going to drive down that road and get blown up again.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. I think when I look at the situation right now, seeing that Texas is taking control and other states are backing it, I see the potential for a very scary, very tense next couple of months as we head into the election. Right. Now more than ever, it's a clear, definitive issue. Before it was kind of like, okay, well, there's nothing we can do about it. Now Texas stood up, and now more individuals are willing to say, like, okay, that's a pretty significant move. For Texans there in the area, what is it? What are the feelings? What are the things going on? What are you hearing from the individuals, citizens of Texas?
I'll start
right now
with my viejo caballero friend down there on the border, who's older cowboy that's mis raíces. He's not going to move. That's his home. Yeah. But then from that level all the way up to the senator that was standing here, Texas state senator, was standing in this room last week talking to a citizens group, saying that thank you for being a citizens group that is concerned. And, that group grew from 20 people to over 400 now over the last year since I've been working here. So to me, people are mobilizing the right people. Not, I'm not judging. I'm just saying the right people are standing up in the sense that they come from all walks of life. And look, this whole operation that I just did, I'm calling it an operation. I didn't wear a pistol at all on purpose because I didn't want there to be this misconstrued so I'm on the border down there with no pistol on my side thinking, man, this is an open carry state, but I'm going to make a statement like Andy Taylor back in maybe RFD days of we can do this with judo. I ended up with a smashed passenger window with a sign on it saying next time for reals after this was over. So, you're going to have those bad actors. And my truck was parked on the side of the road with a bunch of other trucks. But, those are the fear factor things. Yeah. I mean, I always am concerned about personal safety, but my job was to be concerned about those people. Now, what am I seeing? I'm seeing people standing up and saying no. So we're done with that. We're not playing on that field. We're not playing polo anymore. We're going rodeo in Texas. And that's what I see if I could just speak it, very simplistically and 40,000 foot view. But also what I've seen is, like I said, the partnerships where the law enforcement who was standoffish in the beginning are coming towards us and saying, hey, can you come down to headquarters? We really want to talk because whatever you guys are doing, it seemed to work. I gave 15 names to them, and we know who they are. And then we reached out. We had Lara Logan here the other day, and she was here at this rally, and she said on stage, they know who you are, and you will, if something happens during this next few days while this rally gets to the border, we're going to, share these names and you'll be the first people. Well, that's where that has gone, at the operational level. That's where this has gone so that people see that it's not cops. And where these names come from, this is the best part. Citizen journalists on the border who are friends of mine that I knew from when I worked on the border. And I talked to them at the gates and at the checkpoints and say, hey, can I get a word about the border, sir? Sure. Here's what's going on. They're firing 50 cals into Roma, Texas last night from the Mike side. Okay. I mean, an old man was hit in the belly, it happened, went through his wall and hit him in the belly watching, probably watching Mayberry RFD. But, that to me is like, okay, all that happened in the past, which prepared us for now. for a moment such as this. And so it's what I feel, all of us, guys like us, and it doesn't have to be, Green Berets. I mean, anybody that's ever served can understand that I can be eyes, situationally aware to speak to the citizens groups so that when senators come walking in on the state, they're then talking to their fellow senators and Congress people and saying, hey, these people are on to what's going on, and we really need to support them. Because if we don't, for them, they lose their jobs, and that's their number one concern mostly. But for guys like the guy that was here, he doesn't care. He's 80 years old. He's just like, I'm doing this because I care about Texas. That is amazing.
Yeah. The other thing that I wanted to hit you up with, everybody thinks that this caravan, this movement of people coming from South Central America and as far as China and Africa is this organic thing that people are just moving their way. But as we've started to see, and there's actually a documented movie now, it shows that this is a more nefarious and well orchestrated, well-oiled machine with checkpoints, with NGOs and other organizations that are, let's call it what it is, aiding and abetting this illegal migration into the United States. Do you have any sources or anybody on the ground that has been seeing this? Because I know there's people that are staged at like the Darien Gap, which is one of the most dangerous areas, that are able to document and show like, not only are these people in danger of being preyed upon by traffickers, but some are getting killed, murdered. Women are being taken away. Kids are being taken away. What are some of the things that you've heard or information you got 100%. From that?
So one of the people that we talk to a lot, and he's actually about 200 meters behind us in an RV trailer, just R&R right now, is Michael Yon, former 10th Group guy back in the 80s, 90s, got out, became a combat journalist or combat correspondent. He's been staying in the Darien Gap and sending us information. Now, he came specifically for this rally to be here to document what was going on. And he will tell you that right there in the Darien Gap, in the actual Camp Vicente, which is the main camp as they come from the south, and the gap is 26 miles of no roads, essentially. So there's no roads between Colombia and Panama. So in that Camp Vicente, there's what's called a China house. And the China house is really called that for a reason. And so that's where the Chinese go to meet up with people in the China house. And then next to that is the actual UN. So the IOM, it's a immigration UN faction and it's OIM or IOM, depending on what language you use. They are then processing from there and then giving them essentially their marching orders. And that looks like this. And now I can marry up with what Michael's seen with what I saw on the border. When I met 17,000 Haitians in Del Rio about a year and a half ago, over 48 hours, it was hot. I went out with my medic bag and started, helping people because they were, literally dying in the heat and doing IVs and all this other stuff. But then talking to them while I'm down there, with my medic bag in front of me, talking to these people, they were showing me their WhatsApp. And here's my plan, right, in my WhatsApp. I got to go to here, and then I got to go to here. And then before I get across the Darien, because there's the Imbara Indians in there who will extort them for money, or the FARC, in Colombia. So I've got to make sure that I have enough money. So I send it ahead to a Western Union in Mexico City. And then when I get there, I can pull my money back out so that I can pay the peso, which is the tax to the cartels at the border, CDN, CNJG, Golfo, Sinaloa, La Linea, whoever you're going to meet on the border, they have a different tax. You wear this little thing you went to Six Flags that says, okay, I get across the border. They take those off.
No shit.
It's very organized. And there are buses, and there's this, and there's that, and there's NGOs, and the Catholic charities. The Hebrew HIAC, I think Hayek. They're doing that. So they're taking the name of religion and they're using that to make those people comfortable to come up to them. There's nothing religious or spiritual about those people. They're using that stuff. So those people that are coming up, they're just innocent pawns that are being used in most cases. But then in that masses are the nefarious actors who then typically pay a lot more money to come through here more securely through their routes out in the periphery, where I go with my horse and say, okay, well, here they are. Here's what's going on. We've got everything on these folks at the grassroots level for us. But firmly, that's the world I live in, is looking at those patterns and analyzing it and giving that information to the appropriate authorities so they can then do the finished part, which is putting handcuffs on the bad ones, and then not letting those other people from those other countries be exploited. But it's a menu. I saw it on the WhatsApp. It's a menu, and it just tells them how to do it. And that's just one menu. There are others. Some of them are handed out by the American Red Cross. They're right across the border. Some of them, UNESCO gives them a bag with a phone and some money in it or a debit card and says, "Here you go." Now, if I showed up at the border of Russia and somebody handed me some rubles and a Russian phone, I'd be like, "Well, this is awesome, man." But then how long is that going to go on before they take all that away? And then now I'm hungry and I'm on the street corner of Moscow, and now I've got to roll somebody up because I got to feed my family. That's as simple as
exactly.
It gets.
People that live a sheltered life here, that have never left the United States other than the vacation to go on a Royal Caribbean cruise, they don't understand the desperation that comes when you don't have anything. Right. When you don't have anything, when that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it doesn't fucking exist for you because the only thing that you're ever trying to worry about is putting food and water in your belly or your kid's belly. Yeah, you're going to do some fucked up shit. Yep. Yeah, you're going to do some horrible, dehumanized things.
Brother, listen, here's
survive.
Another. I'm going to give you fact witness stuff. This is facts. There are 86,000 kids that have come across this border that are unaccounted for that they know of. All right, and I'm talking about DHS, Homeland Security, and then they hand them off to the different groups who are supposed to set them in families with sponsor families. We found personally in Austin, Texas, not that far away, about an hour away from here, 119 boys that are in a apartment complex with five sponsor families. Now, how does that work? Okay, you're telling me 119 kids are being taken care of 5 sponsor families, one of which is illegal themselves, and then you go in that neighborhood and there's tags everywhere. It says Los Cholos, all right, the gang of boys. So they're down there, and these kids be ranging from the ages of 12 to roughly 18. That was last year when we first found them. We gave the information to the local law enforcement. They did what they had to do. I don't know what the outcome was. It wasn't my job, but that's telling you that they lost control of people. That's just 119 of the 86,000 that are missing. And they're being used as, check this out, to go around Austin and smash windows of cars, to take stuff out of it, to bring it back, to fence it. That's what's happening. That's the reality of it. And that's just that. All right. What are happening to little girls? Like the little girls that I saw in Roma, sisters, 7 and 8 year old from Guatemala, who looked at me and grabbed my leg and said, "Thank you," when I pulled them away from 2 guys that were not their parents, and at 3:00 in the morning. And that wasn't even my job. And I handed them to Border Patrol guys who are good dudes on the border, but then they got to hand them to somebody else. And I have to think to myself, I got 2 daughters. I got to think, I still remember their eyes, filling with tears, saying thank you to me, grabbing me with body armor and a weapon and a dog, and saying, "Wow, we're safe right now." But are you? Because are you going to go somewhere where you're going to be safe? They didn't even know where their family was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the reality of it. The more that we continue, we are enabling a black market industry of pushing people through hundreds of miles of the worst terrain imaginable to get here, to get exploited. And that's a reality. Bleeding hearts and individuals that are, and you know who you are, you know who they are. They will chastise you for wanting to take action. They will call you the worst names on earth because you want security, because you want people to come in, enter the United States legally, and you want people to be safe and secure and not take these perilous journeys. Yeah. The more we continue to allow it, the more people are going to be hurt, the more people are going to die trying to make this journey, and the more people are going to get exploited and sold. There is nothing good about this. This is a dangerous thing to continue doing. And if you're not thinking of the human factor, and you think, and it makes you feel good because you're like, yes, welcome everybody in here. And that's a great feeling. But educate yourself. Be willing to be uncomfortable and face the reality of the situation. that individual that you're like championing to come here and have every resource on earth, yeah, that makes you feel good at that moment. But peel back the layer. Look at the reality of the situation.
You got to look at the
full.
Always look at the second and third order effects. Always consider the worst case scenario, and always err on the side of focusing on the center of gravity, which is the people being used as pawns, the people that live in these areas. And it's not, look, every state now is a border state. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, this just happens to be closer to me, but people of Arizona all the way down, I mean, that's going to just overwhelm their systems. And if they're law enforcement, New Mexico is complete captured territory in the minds of the citizens that say our leaders are not standing up for us. New Mexico is out of control.
Yep.
They won't stand up there on the legislative and law enforcement side. You and I went to, just for people to know on this thing, we went to, our training together. Right. And so, who would have thought in those days, I was the oldest guy there, me and Rad, and, we were the old guys, looking at you guys for motivation, and you guys were looking at us for, kind of the old man wisdom and, a few medical skills here and there. But we would have never thought in those days that we thought we'd go do our time, we'd get out and retire, or do a little, some people just do a few years. And I respect that just as much. But we never would have thought that we would be conducting domestic internal defense.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And definitely not with the idea that I would be back into the same mentality, trying to figure out F3 EAD without the mechanisms and supports of Red Side.
Right. I mean, we don't have any. I think, people ask me, how do you know all this information? Do you still have access to the Red Side? I'm like, I have no access to anything other than just citizens.
Yeah. Green Side and lots of digging and getting to the reality of the truth, because surface level is surface level. Like, you got to dig. And I can't validate this source. I'm going to dig into another one. And if you're out there listening and you're wondering, well, why, Denny? Denny, you're a mindfulness guy. You're the resilience. You're the mental health guy. Yeah, I talk about that stuff, and it's really important. But once a warrior, always a warrior. I want you to continue living your best life and getting that high-paying, awesome job. But yeah, you also have a duty to your nation and to your local community, and you can do both, brothers and sisters.
Yeah, and I think that you can do both. Realm, the resilience stuff, that's so important that we have a purpose, because that when I went through that dark time, I got fired from my job on the border for doing informed consents, and then I'm like in my trailer, just not working out, just I don't drink or anything, but just laying there watching reruns of stuff. And I'm like, no, screw this. I'm going to get up and go help out some friends on the border. And that's how this started, with me and a dog and a horse. I mean, but the purpose is there. You just got to reach out and get it, and get off the couch and say, okay, I'm going to make my bed and I'm going to go to work.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm thankful, and you're in my prayers every single night. And I can't thank you enough for joining us again, Doc, for giving us an update. And I'm very grateful that nothing went down. You guys are safe, and brother, continue doing what you're doing, advocating for change and for some action to actually take place, because like we've all seen it. It starts at home. It starts with us. Like, we have to be the change that we want to see, and we have to be active.
Hey, Dale Proso Liber.
Damn right, brother. Until next time, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you all later. If you like what we're doing and you're enjoying the show, don't forget to share us, like us, subscribe, and head on over to our Patreon, where you can be part of our community and get access to all of our episodes as soon as they drop. And remember, we get through this together. Take care.